On today's episode, we're going to explore that question as we are going to talk about how gossiping as doctoral students, in regards with faculty, can get you in trouble. It also can negatively impact your dissertation process. Look, I want to talk about this because, again, we want to talk about topics that folks aren't talking about. And one of those that my team and I, we were talking about was gossip. And I'm going to talk about what that means in this context of doctoral students. But what we know, it makes sense, right? Is that as a doctoral student, gossip is salacious. It's something we want to hear about. What's the tea with so and so, or why that professor ain't doing that, or why is that student doing this? All those things I understand 100%. But as a part of how we help doctoral students get through the process, we have a particular formula that I'm going to share with you. And one of the components of the formula is going to help you understand why not to engage in this part of the gossiping and how that can detrimentally impact your process. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of From ABD to PhD Show. I'm your host, Dr. Ron Goings, founder of Done Dissertation. Our goal is to demystify the dissertation process so that you can write and defend your dissertation in 1 year or less. Today's episode of From ABD to PhD Show is sponsored by the Done Dissertation Velocity Group Coaching Program. The goal of our program is over the course of 1 year to help you write and defend your dissertation. Because one thing we do know is that you can get this process done. And when you have the support and insights, we know that we can help you get there. So if you want to learn more about the program, you can scan the QR code that is here on your side of the screen, or you can click below and go to velocitydissertation.com. And if you happen to be watching this on a social media platform, please go and drop the link in the comments just so that folks have it. I just want to say thanks so much for people who have done that. I'll make sure I loop back around after this episode is over to say thank you so much. And in addition to this, today's episode is in partnership with HBCU Smart TV. Our episodes do stream on their Sundays platform. And so if you want to learn more about what's going on HBCU Smart TV and download the app on your Roku device, you can go to www.hbcusmarttv.com. Again, it's www.hbcusmarttv.com. And thank you for folks who are watching this on your Roku devices. I really do appreciate each of you all. All right, so today's episode is one that I'm looking forward to talking about because it's just one of those ones that we got to get to. As we're thinking about the journey being a doctoral student and what that all entails, part of what can happen is gossip. It's just stuff within the department, all that stuff. And we know that when everything is in alignment with, you and your process, the dissertation writes itself and your folks get done very quickly. As you've seen on a previous episode, I had Dr. Terrace Watson talk about her journey by, going to cancer treatment, writing her dissertation, and still finishing in 8 months. So like when everything you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and you're focused and dedicated, this process moves quickly. However, I've seen sometimes throughout folks in their doctoral programs, and I'm going to give you an example from my own doc program about how sometimes gossiping can actually deter you from your goal and destination. And here's why it can negatively impact your dissertation process. So the first thing I want to talk about when we think about how gossip and how, just gossip in general in your program can negatively impact your experience is that sometimes gossip, especially when we're talking amongst students, all those things can start to put doubt in your head and actually taint an experience that if you just would experience yourself, you might actually find success in it. And so have you ever had it when you're talking to someone for so long that, let's say they're talking about like how bad their day was, that all of a sudden your day felt bad, but you didn't really have a bad day? That is the thing that I'm talking about that I want you all to consider as part of this process. And sorry, I know there's a little bit of a delay, a lag here on my video, but we're going to fix that real quick. And I want you all to start considering how those conversations that you have as a student, as well as when you're writing your dissertation, really have an impact on your process. Because I'm going to give you an example. When I was a doctoral student, folks in my program did not want to take Dr. Shockley. And I say his name, I say this all now. Dr. Shockley is one of my greatest mentors, been very supportive of me in my career. And he knows this, right? Folks didn't want to take him because they felt that he was a hard grader and that he had ridiculous expectations. Had I listened, I may not have taken him. But I said, let me experience the class for myself. What ended up happening my first year, it sure enough was a wake-up call for me as a doc student. That is the class that I often talk about as part of my story, where the professor was Dr. Shockley. He wrote a big X on page 3 of my paper and told me that I was going to need a writing coach and editor. I had a choice to make. Was I going to see a writing coach or editor? I was going to figure it out myself, or I was going to leave the program because I couldn't figure it out. One of those three was going to happen. And I said, you know what? I'm going to figure this thing out myself. And this is why done dissertation is here. But from that experience, being in that class, I started to recognize, oh, he just has real high expectations. And he wants us to be informed scholars. And so you can't just come to class having, maybe just read a couple of pages. You need to read all the text and bring your supporting documents with you so that when you engage in conversation in class, you have literature to back it up. So literally what I started to have to do was read other journal articles and bring these stacks of PDFs to class. So if I wanted to make a point, I could say such and such scholar said this in his piece right here. Here's what they found. Here's why this might matter based on what we're talking about today. That stuff started to prepare me for building out my scholarship. And so literally what I did after that first class is I took any class that he offered, I took it. And people were like, oh, why are you taking this class? We had another class with him, philosophy of education. It was a philosophy class. We were learning all these different philosophical perspectives, and then we had to write in the mindset of that particular philosopher and their views on a particular issue. That was the most challenging class. And the challenge of it was not necessarily adapting the mindset of, let's say, a phenomenologist, or let's just even say, I'm trying to think of some of the, we learned in that class, we definitely learned about some of the African-centered philosophers. We could only write 2 pages. Like, we had to write these ideas and make an argument in 2 pages. You know how hard that is when these ideas are complex based on what these people think, and then you have to make an idea in an argument in 2 pages. Like, it was so difficult, but that skill set, I've been able to leverage it because now when I go to write op-eds, I know how to get right to the point and drill down exactly what I want to write about in a way that's concise, that's readable, and that the reader gets the insights from it. I learned that skill set in Dr. Shockley's philosophy education class. And then lastly, I took the last class. It was like a qualitative methods class because I knew I wanted to do qualitative methods. I took a liking to all the stuff that I was reading in that class. And one of the methods that I learned about in that class was portraiture. And having read some of the work on portraiture, and one of the researchers in my area, Dr. Marvin Lin, shout out to Dr. Lin, he's a dean right now at UC Denver. I read his work that used portraiture. And that allowed me to reach out to him and say, hey, this article really informed me. And then I took one of his articles in my first publication. I used his article as like the motivation for me to write the one I wrote about my experience as a Black male teacher. So like all these things stemmed from me taking a class that folks take. And if people knew that when they would ask me about, oh, should I take Dr. Shaka, I'll say, he's going to have high expectations for you, but you're going to learn the most out of many of the classes in this program. That is the type of thing that sometimes as a doc student, when you're getting ready for your dissertation, if you start to hear all those chatters happening, you might start to say, oh, that's going to be my experience because that's what happened to them. And that's not the case in this. So sometimes there are some things you have to experience for yourself to know, all right, is this really the case? Or take the insights from other people, but then just keep it in the back of your mind as you're going through this journey, because then you have some background knowledge. These are the things that we do, because I find that sometimes you might find there's a faculty member that's a great fit for you, but because you're scared to work with them for whatever reason, you avoid them. And you may not have them on your committee, etc. Like, those are the things that happen. Like, I knew for me, I wanted Dr. Shockley on my committee. I wanted someone else as my chair, Dr. Grosslin, who ended up being my chair. Shout out to you, Dr. Grosslin. I wanted her to be on my chair because she had a different perspective on qualitative research that I really thought I needed, because she did a lot of work on like digital storytelling. I thought there was a component of the storytelling aspect that I wanted in my work. And then Dr. Shockley will all, supplement that. And then Dr. Robinson was in the higher ed department, would kind of well round my committee because he had the higher ed research expertise. So these are the things that had I not gone through this journey, I wouldn't have had to experience for myself. And again, these are some of the things that we help our clients think through in their program, because a lot of times folks might feel like, and on last week's episode, I talked about this idea around when is it time to leave your chair. And for some folks, sometimes you're trying to leave too soon in the process. You haven't even given your chair enough time to help guide and mold you. And then sometimes, to be quite frank, as doctoral students, your work might not be ready. And this is the things that we help our clients do in our Velocity coaching program. And so if you're someone who's interested in learning more, you want the support to, get out of the program, get what you need to get to where you want to go, and you want to put the work in, you have the dedication to finishing, then I want you to go ahead and make sure that you apply to work with us in our program, because I know this is the things that could be the difference from you finishing your dissertation or not, is by getting that extra support. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to www.velocitydissertation.com to learn more about what we have going on. And again, we're talking about all things gossip on this episode from ABD to PhD show, because we know that gossip just can take folks out. It could just derail your program unnecessarily. Another piece that I think that when we think about gossip and how it can be negatively impact your process is that gossip can cause confusion in your dissertation process. And so to give the best analogy I can give, and Renee gave this analogy, is the game Telephone. Y'all remember that game Telephone? So my daughter, sometimes will play it with my daughter. Right? I have a 5-year-old, right? At the time it's recording, I have a 5-year-old. And we'll play this game with her where, Telephone, where people line up and you tell somebody something in their ear, you whisper it, they have to remember it and then tell the next person. And it goes down the line. And the whole goal is that from the first person who told the story to, let's say, the 20th person in the line, does the story the first person told remain the same? And more often than not, in the game of Telephone, the story somehow gets switched up. And that is sometimes what happens when folks gossip. Because sometimes there are things, I've seen this happen with our clients sometimes, and we talk through this, is that sometimes they may have communication with their chair, especially in the written document. They get feedback and there's things off to the side. And we have some clients say, oh my God, my chair hates my work. My chair gives me so many pieces of feedback. This is ridiculous. I'm not doing what I need to do. I worked so long on this document and they gave me all this feedback. But I always just say, well, my first question is, let me see that feedback. Because sometimes what ends up happening is that sometimes we can have this internal gossip, like, oh, this chair, we have all these negative thoughts that happen, not even from someone else, right? And sometimes you can send your document to someone else and they tell you all these things that the chair is probably doing. But what ends up happening when we look at the feedback, I'll look and be like, hey, actually, this is great insight. They're just asking you to fix APAs, a bunch of APA errors here. Fix all this stuff and turn it back in. They don't have anything substantive about the content. That means you're going in the right direction. Literally, that kind of conversation with someone who has better insight about the process can really help eliminate all that gossip and how that gossip can negatively infiltrate someone. If you think about this, some folks might gossip about, like, just saying, oh, don't take that professor or don't work with them as your chair. Little do you know that part of the reason why they didn't work well with the chair is because they never turned anything in. Or if their chair said to turn something in on the 15th, they never got it to until the next month on the 15th. And then they wonder why they've been delayed. So the delay that they're talking about being a result of the chair might be for them as a student, but you don't know the whole context. This is why sometimes the gossip that happens in doc programs is not necessary and it's not helpful to you finishing your process, and it can just cause more confusion. And so if you experience that, just let me know in the comments. If you have other questions, drop them in the comments. If you're watching us on social media from our folks on HBCU Smart TV, you can follow us on our social media channels. Just type in Done Dissertation. You will find us. And if you could send us a DM or drop a comment on our YouTube page, and we'd be happy to respond to you there. And in addition to this, right, I think that gossip can also cause unnecessary enemies. Look, it's important to keep your name out of any of the foolishness that goes on in the programs. And trust me, there is foolishness that goes on in any doctoral program. It's people, right? As I talked about at the start of this episode, our formula at Done Dissertation is the people plus the process equals the product. You are dealing with people. People have all sorts of reasons they do things. They have all sorts of motives. They have all sorts of reasons for stuff. And so you don't want to get caught up in any of the crossfire of gossip that happens, because faculty members talk, students talk, and in particular, the higher education, as big as it may seem, is not that big. And especially if you're from a minoritized group in higher education and you're underrepresented, I'm pretty sure that you're probably 2 degrees of separation from any scholar in your area that shares your identity, most likely. I even say it now for me as a Black man in the academy. Many of the folks I remember I was a student, I was like, oh my God, these people are, so far removed from me. Now that I've been in here for a while, I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I've interviewed some of them on our office hour shows, like just folks like Dr. Gloria Latson Billings. If you haven't watched that episode, go check that episode out. I mean, she was one of my idols as a doc student, and as a professor. I was able to interview, like, because I had a connection. Like, it's just the academy is so small. So you don't want to get into these little, what I call from around my way, called chatty patty type situations, like where you're just talking and gossiping on things that don't really have any relevance to you and don't help you propel your dissertation forward. Like, at this point, you got to be laser focused on getting out of the doctoral program. Anything else that's not helping you do that is not helpful at this part of the process, especially gossiping and all that stuff. I want you to make sure you're helping people along that are behind you in the process at your university. Do all those things, but don't get caught up in any of the gossip. And look, I know some folks might take this advice with like a grain of salt, but I'm just here to let you know I've worked in politics. I've seen it at the highest level. Higher ed is no different. Folks, things happen, and you want to make sure that as best as you can, because there's a narrative that's going to be painted about you. You want to be best sure that you are able to have an accurate narrative painted about you, and you don't want to get caught up in negative gossip that derails you. I want you to be known for being an amazing scholar who has transformed the lives of people with their research. That's what I want for you. That's the gossip I want people to say if they're going to say anything about you. And so as a student, you want to be able to start developing that. This is something I learned when I was a faculty member. Shout out to my department chair at the time, Dr. Moore Thomas. She remember her saying this to me. She was like, you have to paint your own narrative, and you don't want to get caught by anything that's going to take away from that. And so I always I've taken that advice in my career, and I just want to pass it along to you. And again, that's advice from a phenomenal Black woman who always coming to the support of Black men and folks in higher education. So I just want to be mindful, and I'd be remiss to not talk about that as you all considering about how just being involved in gossip can derail your process. And I don't want anything to take you away from the destiny that you have for your work. And so with that said, I would love to hear any comments, questions you all might have on this week's episode, because it's, again, slightly different, but I promise you're not hearing anybody talk about this stuff, because we want to give you all the real deal about the what's happening in the lives of doctoral students. So again, all of these insights are to help give you pieces, right? I'm trying to help you build that toolkit so that when you get to your dissertation, you know how to navigate, because you've already had these insights and trainings, and like, look, Dr. Goins prepared me for this. And we get comments all the time about how this has really helped them, get out of the program. And so what I want to do now is I want to introduce you all to a new training that we have available for you all, a complimentary training that we have available for you all, because we have heard from a number of students that in order to, once you stop and don't engage in any gossip, right, you got to do your dissertation. And so once you get to the dissertation, many folks have said, I'm struggling initially with the academic writing. And so with that said, we had created a training for you all, and you all helped us develop this training. And it's called Elevate Your Academic Writing. And this training is phenomenal and it will give you the insights you need to engage in academic writing with the confidence and clarity to get your dissertation done. And so I want to provide that to you. I'm going to give you a way to get access to that. I'm going to bring this up on the screen. Just give me 1 second so that you all can get access to this training. And what you're going to do is going to be a number you're going to text. And it's going to be text the hashtag Elevate, ELVATE, to 301-701-2466. And again, I'll bring that up in a second. And it's, again, hashtag. Make sure you use the hashtag Elevate, ELVATE, to 301-701-2466. And again, you can use that number to secure the Elevate Your Academic Writing training. Give me 1 second to pull it up. Again, if you want access to this training, go ahead and text hashtag Elevate 301-701-2466, and you can secure the Elevate Your Academic Writing training from there. I'll send you a text. I'll send you a link. It is our text. Shout out to Superphone, who we use as our provider. Actually, Renee and I have a podcast episode that's going to air soon with Superphone about our journey using them, as how we're able to give you all access to these type of things via text message. And so go ahead and text hashtag Elevate to 301-701-2466. That way you get access to the training. The training is complimentary. And again, those text messages is us. So if you want to shoot us a text, go ahead and do so. But make sure that you grab the training, because again, we want to give you all the insights that you need to get the work and get the writing done. And so with that said, I hope again that this episode was helpful for you. Let me know if there's any comments. If you happen to watch this on YouTube, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button and hit the notification bell so you know when other episodes are coming out. And again, if you're watching this on HBCU Smart TV, we want to say thank you so much. That is one of our partners in this, who has been able to give us an additional platform to stream our episodes. And so again, if you're interested in learning more, go to hbcusmarttv.com. I'll put their link in here too. So folks who are watching online, if you want to go ahead and type that in the comments, that'd be great. And folks who have Roku devices, you can go ahead and download the app so you can actually stream this episode on your television device as well as anywhere else that you might watch Roku programming. So again, this is the opportunity. Don't get caught up in the riffraff of, trying to get caught up in the gossip that can happen in your program. I don't want that for you. I want you all to finish. I want you all to get out of these programs. And if you are someone now at this point, you're like, hey, I got the academic writing training, but I want some more intense support. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to go to www.velocitydissertation.com to apply to work with us in our Velocity coaching program. Our goal is within 1 year to help you finish your dissertation. So by this time you're watching this episode and you decide to apply and work with us, by this time next year, you are done with your dissertation. It can happen. It can happen very quickly once you come into our support structure, learn our system, and apply it and execute. But you have to make the first step. And that step is actually learning more about our program and actually applying and filling out the application. It'll take you about 5 to 7 minutes to complete, and it requires a writing sample just so we know what you're working on and have an idea about where you're going with your work. Just so we can make sure that we are the best fit for you. And if we're not a fit, we will always refer you and send you off to someone else in our trusted network that might be a better support for you to help get done. And so with that said, I want to say thank you so much for watching this episode from ABD to PhD show. I'm your host, Dr. Mo Goings, founder of Done Dissertation. And until next week, let's go ahead and get these dissertations done. Take care.